Welcome to Talking Cars. I'm Jennifer Stockberger.
I'm Jake Fisher.
And I'm Steve Ellick.
So it's that time of year again, and I don't mean coming holidays or cool weather. It's reliability time. Yay. So exciting. So every year around this time, fall, Stephen and Anita mostly compile this comprehensive data we have on reliability, which is really asking CR members, what kind of problems did you have with your car over the last 12 months? And this year, we have data on over 330,000 vehicles, ranging from model year 2000 to 2023. And what's a little bit different about this year's data is we, Stephen and Anita, again, teased out some of the trouble spots that were particular to those different powertrains. And Stephen, if you could elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, I mean, automakers offering electrification, it's growing rapidly. So we really had to adapt to the industry and pick up on that. We have trouble spots that are EV specific. There's up to 12 of them that an electric vehicle can get. These include the electric motor, the EV battery, and the EV charging system. The internal combustion cars stay the same. There's about 17 trouble spots there. Mm-hmm. But then what's interesting is that hybrids, it's a internal combustion engine with an EV battery and an electric motor as well. So they can have up to 19 trouble spots. And then the plug-in hybrid gets one more on top of that. They are also...
combo.
Yeah, combo. They also get the EV charging system added to that. Yep. So it's a little bit different based on what level of electrification a car has this year.
And with that said, we were then able to look at the trends and differences, not between models, as we always do, but between those powertrains. And there were some very interesting trends. On average, over the last 3 years, 3 model years, electric vehicles were 79% less reliable than their internal combustion counterparts. Plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, maybe, to your point, 146% less reliable. And hybrids, 26% more reliable. So again, I'm looking to the naysayers. I knew it. EVs aren't reliable as a whole, but that's not necessarily the case, Jake.
Well, I mean, first of all, as Stephen says, there's less trouble spots when it comes to EVs. So first of all, when you think about it, less to go wrong, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a whole lot less trouble spots because they don't have,
you would think,
right? I mean, they don't have multi-speed transmissions. They don't have a fuel system, ignition system. Go down the list. There's so many parts. So again, you would think that there'd be less problems if it was apples to apples comparison. The issue is not necessarily that EVs are less reliable because of EV stuff. The problem is that they tend to be, they tend to be from manufacturers that are new at this, right? And I think we've said it before. It's like, if all the cars were electric vehicles and suddenly a couple of manufacturers says, we're going to try this combustion engine stuff.
They'd have a lot of problems.
They would have unbelievable amount of problems. So again, it's new to a lot of those. And the other thing is, with a lot of these EVs, we've got manufacturers that are kind of new to the game, right? I mean,
basically, EVs are really, they're two separate stories. There's Tesla, now it's been out for over a decade, but a relatively startup electric.
I mean, most of the manufacturers have been around for over 100 years.
Exactly.
They're like the infancy in terms of producing cars.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where we see the difference, where the Teslas, they figured out this EV thing.
Right.
Their powertrains are pretty solid for the most part.
Yeah.
It's really the build quality, the paint and trim, body hardware. That's where they're kind of suffering, versus the other EVs that are built by the legacy automakers. The manufacturing process and the build quality, that's been figured out already. They've been doing that for 100 years. It's the EV components that are new to these companies, and that's where you're seeing some of these problems on EVs. So it's like the Tesla versus other EVs.
Well, in Tesla and Rivian and all these other automakers, they're just kind of new to the game. And it's not just, I want to make it excruciating clear. We're not just talking about the paint finish, right? I mean, we're talking about reliability. We're talking about stuff that you're bringing it back. You need to get it fixed. And we're talking about, in some cases, the door handle's not working, the trunk lid is not closing, broken trim pieces. In some cases, I think there were some suspension issues even with some Teslas. So it's just it's the stuff that, you know, again, the Ford and the GMs, they've worked out for a long time. It's that, you know, the new stuff they've worked out, the electric stuff they've worked out.
Right. I think, Jake, you put it very nicely, and I'm just going to read two words you said, was that Tesla's finding it hard to be a good car company, but it's great at making an EV. It's great at EV-ness, whereas longtime car makers are having a hard time. They build great cars, but they're having a hard time being EV companies.
Right.
And you're seeing a little bit of that. So EVs in general are influenced by both. You have the Teslas, and I'm going to talk about that in its own right in a minute, versus these other newer, either legacy automakers who are making EVs or new to the party Rivians that are dragging that whole EV down.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Tesla for a minute, where the volume is Model 3, Model Y. And there is a change in the Model Y, for example, for this year.
Yeah, the Model Y is newly recommended.
Yes.
And it goes back to what we've said over and over again, is don't buy the first model year of a vehicle, wait a couple years. And that's what we see here with the Model Y. You wait a couple years and now it's average reliability. And we were able to recommend it this year for that reason, following in the Model 3's footsteps.
And Tesla's putting their efforts where their volume is, because you know, they're really not behaving the same with the 3 and the Y as they are with the S and the X. We're still seeing that difference.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's just going to say efforts. They're putting a lot of effort in the X and the Model S. Unfortunately, some of those efforts are creating problems because there's so much technology and they're trying new things with that. And maybe, you know, we would do say this in other places in the industry, that you take these high-end vehicles and you throw the new technology first, and then when you get the bugs worked out, then you go and you put on the mainstream models. And right now, Tesla, for the most part, is a Model 3, Model Y company.
Right.
The other
volume,
ones,
absolutely.
I mean, the other ones are kind of just out there as these halo vehicles, maybe to try out the latest technology, and maybe that's a good strategy.
Yeah. So, and again, Stephen, correct me if I'm wrong, the problem rates on that smaller, new niche, I shouldn't even say niche, those smaller volume electric vehicles is enough to drag down the 3s and the Ys in terms of EVs as a wholesale technology, in terms of overall.
Yeah, overall, when you compare internal combustions overall to EVs, that's what's happening.
Okay. I want to go the converse now. You just said 2 minutes ago, hybrids now have the combo. They have more problem spots to go wrong, yet 26% less problem rates than their internal combustion.
I think you made some calculation errors there. It doesn't make any sense.
No,
go back, check your math.
It's the other way.
Hybrids are more reliable when you look overall, but the reason behind it is if you think about the automakers that are building hybrids, you know, Toyota builds so many hybrids and they figured out this technology. They've had the Prius out for well over a decade at this point. They build fantastic hybrids. So when you compare all internal combustion engine vehicles to all hybrids, you're seeing a lot of Toyotas, a lot of reliable Hyundai or Kia models, and that's really why the hybrids are more reliable, even though there are more components that can go wrong.
Yeah.
And same thing for the plug-in hybrid, like the RAV4 Prime. Toyota makes a fantastic plug-in hybrid in terms of reliability because they figured that out as well. So that's the reason for that. That doesn't necessarily mean go out and buy a hybrid. If you see an F-150 hybrid, oh, maybe you should buy that. The F-150 hybrid kind of bucks that trend because it has issues with the transmission and various other things, but it also has the EV, the electric component issues as well.
Right. I wrote in my notes, A equals B, B equals C, but A does not equal C. You know, hybrids have more to go wrong. Hybrids are
more math.
I know. Well, let me walk you through this. They're hybrids, but just because the F-150 is a hybrid doesn't mean it's reliable. Keep up with me.
Well, also, just because the F-150 hybrid is a hybrid doesn't mean you're going to get like 40 miles per gallon.
Correct.
You know?
Right.
I mean, it's a confusing world. I mean, you started talking about electrification. right? I mean, I guess, don't all cars have batteries in them? So it's very confusing. What truly is a hybrid? And then F-150 is not going to be getting you 25 miles per gallon or 30 miles per gallon. It's more of like a power hybrid. That it's using a hybrid powertrain in order to get extra towing capacity and whatnot. So it's super confusing market. Totally, when we're trying to make it clear. But I mean, again, you're exactly right. It's like, who has been doing it longer? This is the same story everywhere. It's all about growing pains and working out the bugs. I mean, the Prius came out in the late 90s.
I know.
Right? I mean, we're almost like a quarter of a century into this hybrid synergy drive or whatever the heck they call it. But they've gotten really, really good at it.
Yep.
And that's really what it's all about. And just like Tesla has been, again, mass producing electric cars pretty long time now. And they've been doing it pretty well.
Right.
Yeah.
I wrote, for those considering models, be it hybrids or electrics, or even mainstream, you just said it. We always caution, don't pick up the car in its first year, but give it time. Maybe give it a few more years for new technologies and all of that.
Go with the company that's been doing whatever it is for a longer time.
Exactly.
Yeah, there you go.
I wouldn't buy a television from Toyota.
Right. No, the truth is you'd buy anything from Toyota. No, you know what I mean. But based on
snowblower from Honda, maybe.
Right,
but
yes. But yes. And, and that shows up in the brand rankings, which are also part of this release, where you do see the Toyota, the Lexus, up near the top because of that. One, just to close out kind of this idea of teasing apart, plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, 146% more problematic than their internal combustion cars. And again, the whys there are what?
That's another case of you have all these problems with a vehicle that doesn't have any plug-in system in it, and then you add that plug-in system and there is more to go wrong there. Right. For example, the Chrysler Pacifica, the gas version is average this year, and it's newly recommended. However, you add that plug-in hybrid drivetrain system to it, and it pulls that down because there's EV problems and issues with the electrical system.
So taking either a reliable vehicle or one that's on the cusp of reliability and adding the plug-in hybrid components can be a detriment to that.
It can be overall as a trend, but again, there's always a vehicle that bucks the trend, and that's what I was talking about earlier. RAV4 Prime, one of the most reliable vehicles in our survey this year. I mean, it's a plug-in hybrid, and Toyota just excels at making
new implementation, I guess. The idea of even if a car's unreliable, adding the plug-in hybrid component is probably not going to help. It's going to make it less reliable.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Which manufacturers are going after technology. And when it comes to plug-in hybrids, it's often a lot of the European manufacturers. It's Jeep and Chrysler, and we're seeing this. Again, you start with you're on the edge. And again, if you're interested in a new technology, you're interested in a plug-in hybrid. If Toyota is already making that hybrid that reliable, even if it's taking a little bit of a hit, right, you're still going to be pretty good with one of the Prime vehicles, right? The Prime line of RAV4 Prime or the Toyota Prius Prime.
And so that's what I say. If you're looking at something new, look to the brand. I mean, there's all those elements to bring into this car you're considering. And that's what this crazy comprehensive reliability data gives you.
Yep. Exactly. So, each model has a story of itself.
Right.
So, look into it and see what works for you.
Yes. So on that note, the charts, the display, the presentation of the problem areas for each vehicle model, we've also done some work there. Easier to understand, more easy to digest, a little bit of detail there. And again, this would be both online and in the print.
So we basically teased out the electric vehicles. They have their own problem areas, their own trouble spots. You'll see for hybrids and plug-in hybrids, they'll have all the potential gas car trouble spots and the electrified trouble spots in them. And you could go through and see really what areas are issues for these vehicles.
And I think it's something we need to make clear that those are weighted. Like you talked about paint and trim on, say, a Tesla, not the same level of concern, if you will, as engine or electric motor.
Exactly. So if you look at there's two new higher level groupings, like with build quality and powertrain. So you see something that's, build quality is not great, and that's maybe a body hardware problem. That's a paint and trim problem. you can see that as build quality versus if you see powertrain and you see well below average for powertrain, that is really a cue to say, okay, let's look into this a little bit deeper and see what the actual powertrain problem was. Was it an engine issue, transmission, or in the case of an EV, a electric motor or a battery?
Yeah. So you could see that high level and then you could dig in. But what's, again, coming back to the thing, they don't necessarily add up because, again, you might see a car with a lot of build quality issues that we still might be recommending.
Right.
Because again, it's not, or you might see a vehicle that has just, relatively few major powertrain problems and we're saying stay away. So I think that's really key.
Yeah. And nested, you said dig in, you can look a little deeper in the online version and see where very specifically the problems are. Yeah. And just so everybody's aware too, this is the time of year overall scores change because that reliability is a piece. There's the road test score, which we test here, the reliability, the owner satisfaction, and then obviously the standard safety features add on to that. So this is when overall scores can change.
Yeah, and it's very funny because a lot of people are like, you guys like this and you guys like that.
Yeah.
And again, what we like in terms of our testing is a piece of the puzzle.
Right.
But a big piece of it is that feedback from the members and all those hundreds of thousands of vehicles. And that's how we're rating the vehicles. So no, if I was going to go pick the car in the parking lot, I might pick that other one. But again, it's like we know from consumers, this is what's important. Reliability is 100% important when people buy cars. And that's why it's such a big part of
road test is, the road test is what we like.
Right.
But when you look at reliability, it's what you told us. And owner satisfaction is what you like.
What you like.
Yeah.
And I would argue some of the road test is what we like. Because a lot of it is truly objective measures. Some of it is subjective. Well, and we use juries and we do all these things to tease out.
Right. I mean, the way we've devised how we even weight the road test, it's about what consumers like. Right. And yes, what I like is probably, I might want a car that I
definitely not what I like.
That I could drift around the track or something, but not what, most consumers, are looking for.
Yep. So we recently had some other data, which I found really interesting, and it has to do with sustainability and how people think of sustainability. And it was a different survey area, but it was a nationally representative, smaller scale survey. But the question is, when you're thinking automotive, what does sustainability mean to you as a consumer? And the answer was some of what you'd expect, fuel economy, emissions, but it was reliability.
Yeah.
It was reliability. Jake, I know you dug a little deeper into all of that.
No, that's right. And you're right. And just, obviously, fuel economy and things like that is not a surprise. But reliability, when it came to automotive, was very important because, again, we don't want disposable vehicles, right?
We don't want disposable products anywhere, but particularly.
Right, exactly. So a vehicle that's going to last was really one of the things of the people who found sustainability was important to them. Right. That's really what they were calling out. So, yeah.
I would not have thought that would be the answer. I really, but that idea of
much more so
it
than
lasts
even
longer and I can keep it longer. And it's a wonderful way of looking at it, I think.
Yeah.
And another reason why this reliability data is so important.
Yeah.
So moving on, we do have a couple of audience questions specifically focused on reliability. As always, any topic, keep them coming. talkingcars@icloud.com. This one comes from Rich. Longtime listener, fan of the podcast, and CR member for over 40 years. Thank you, Rich. I understand that each year's reliability rating for a given model compares it to all of the other models in your survey data of that same year. But how has average reliability changed over the years? For example, is an average car from 2022 more or less reliable than one from 2012? I'd love to know the answer. So I'm going to start with you, Jake.
Sure. So I was around here in 2012. So,
I know. That's why I started with
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for being a loyal member, and thank you for understanding how we do our reliability. So that's good too. It's a great question, and a lot of people think, well, all cars are reliable these days, and we know that's not true. Right. I mean, we have a whole fleet of cars here that are constantly going back and forth, getting repaired. Thank you, John, for hustling them around.
Right.
But the truth is that I wouldn't say, so looking at the data for many years and going back 2012 or going back to 2000, cars are not getting more reliable. Cars are about the same in terms of reliability. What's changing is the type of problems that they have.
Right.
So what we're seeing over the years, so on 10-year span, we're seeing less problems when it comes to like powertrain problems. Those major problems are definitely improving, but we see a lot of other problems, the new technology problems, electronics. So, I mean, you go back to 2012, not every car had a giant screen in front of you, a giant touch screen. We're seeing a lot of those electronic problems, those types of things. And again, those could be serious issues. I mean, right in the survey, it's not just like, did it freeze? It's like, did the screen go off? And
did you have to, is it hardware replacement? Did you have to go to the dealer and get the screen replaced, which is a massive expensive unit?
Right.
Well,
You're having computer problems with your cars, not necessarily engine problems.
Exactly. Yeah. It could be, but it's still, and that's really why we also have the weighting of various different trouble spots of, what's important. A engine failing may leave you on the side of the road, but a blank screen, maybe you can restart. And
I'll say one of the bright sides of those types of problems, as annoying and terrible as they can be, we see them get remedied very quickly. Yeah. So a auto manufacturer comes out with this transmission that they just can't make work. It's still not working through the life cycle of that generation of the car.
Foci from,
But sometimes they can fix those electronic problems with over-the-air updates, with other updates, and get those things worked out quickly. Again, wait a couple of years, they'll work out the bugs. Don't install the new operating system on your computer or your phone right away. Wait till the update 0.01 comes out, and you'll be better off.
The other thing too is, depending on how it's implemented, there can be a lot of functionality in that screen. Tesla Model 3 is a great example where there's so much going on that if you don't have that, if that screen is glitchy, there's a lot of functionality.
You don't know your speed, you may not know what gear you're in, all these things.
As opposed to something else that maybe you lose your audio or your Apple CarPlay for a while.
Yep.
Much, much bigger difference. And I'm sure that type of thing weighs into the owner satisfaction of how often do I have to deal with not seeing my speed or being able to shift my car. The other thing, and I'm looking for your feedback on this, as I was going through the notes, the rates are about the same, yes, and they've changed from, say, body hardware or something, or true mechanical engine hardware to electronics. But I do say, to Rich's question, even between 2012 and 2022, there's a lot more electronics. So even for that rate to be flat means they're getting better at it.
Oh, sure.
Because there's so much more that's electronic.
And actually what's interesting is, going back to the idea of those automakers that have the longest history.
Yeah.
What's interesting is when we look at some of those infotainment systems, it's surprisingly like the BMWs and that are actually pretty good at it, because you think back, like what was it? iDrive was one of the very first complex multitasking system or whatnot. And that's like almost around 20 years old now. Yeah. They've worked it out. It's those automakers that are a little bit newer at it that are struggling more.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then
choose the same theme.
Choose to put a whole bunch of stuff in there.
Sure.
Anyway, again, it's on the implementation as well as the electronics. The next question comes from John in Ellicott City, Maryland. Our family needs a fourth car for around town driving. I've wanted the fourth car to be an EV, but since they are so expensive and CR's reliability reports for EVs haven't been great, John, tease out your car. I've not really considered it, but now I see the Tesla Model 3 is around $30K after rebates, and CR now says it has great reliability. If my primary concern is reliability, especially of how it relates to the cost of ownership, do you think I'm better off with a Model 3 or a Toyota Corolla Hatchback? Steve.
I think, to answer his question directly, with the options that he gave us, I think he should go for the Model 3 out of those two. It does have average reliability. It is a great car. You can get it for cheap with the rebates now, as he's saying.
Yep.
And I think he'd be very happy with that, especially as a fourth car. It's, something that you could leave charging in the garage and take around town. You don't need it for long trips.
Yep.
An EV is a perfect choice for that. And it sounds like he's done the research on the Model 3. Out of those two choices, that's what I'd choose.
You agree?
No.
Okay.
I mean, first of all, going back to what we were talking, I mean, it's interesting. This person is looking for sustainable choice.
Yes.
And when it comes to sustainability, we're looking at EV. We're also looking for reliability.
Yep.
And it's hard to find those things together. And I agree. In terms of average reliability, it is true. The Model 3, we do recommend it. But I'm not seeing I'm looking for a sports car. I'm not seeing I'm looking for a supercar. Model 3 and Tesla vehicles are extremely satisfying, fun cars to drive. They drive like high performance vehicles.
Yep.
And we see it. People are very satisfied with it because they're getting basically, a BMW M3 for a cheap price, like a super high performance vehicle. But if you're just looking for something reliable to get around town, it's overkill. And I think you're making some compromises when it comes to truly just reliability. Don't even worry about it. You know what? When the pothole gets that Corolla, when you get into somebody hits the bumper of that Corolla, it's going to be much easier to deal with than that Tesla.
Yep.
So I think that is, he's going to be better off with the Corolla. But again, it is apples and oranges here. I mean, do you want a Ferrari or do you want a Prius? You know, what are you going for? And if you really wanted the reliable, sustainable choice, you know what you get? You get a Toyota Prius Prime, because you go around town, you could drive a Toyota Prius Prime on full electric. And you get your electric and you get your reliability, and it's probably around the same price around after rebates.
Well, you led a little bit into what I was going to say, but my answer to John would be the Model 3 in this case, because he gave two things that hit me. Was one, around town. He's really going to be able to take advantage of, it's got plenty of range, but he'll never have to put, be charging along the way as long as they're using it around town. And the other was that it's a fourth car. So if they needed to do a longer trip, et cetera, they probably have another one in their garage that they can use as an alternate. And it's a great exposure to a very high performing, to his point, now average reliability, not great reliability, but average reliability EV. Sounds like his first one. That if you're going to be happy with an EV and that whole experience, this might be a car. So I said around town EV to pick the Model 3. However, I did add in my notes, plug-in hybrid electric vehicle with the around town element might be the kind of middle ground between those two. Thank you, John. Great question. As always, as I say, keep them coming. talkingcars@icloud.com. Be questions on reliability or anything else we talk about. Any additional information you might want on reliability, check out the show notes below. We appreciate, Stephen, your work and that of Anita Lamb, who literally spend months breaking down this reliability data so that we can see what are the most reliable and least reliable cars for that matter. So thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Sure.